Hey guys, welcome to another video. In today's video, I'm going to be making creamy heirloom tomato soup. I have these heirloom tomatoes that I got here from one of my pet sitting clients. Actually, oh yes, this was a pet sitting client actually. We were house sitting for her and she has a garden full of these and she left them out for us to enjoy while we were there. And there was a lot of them and we couldn't eat them all and they were going to go bad. So I decided that I'm going to make some heirloom creamy tomato soup with that. Now, I'm going to start off by coring the center out, and I'm going to cut them into fourths because they're so big. And as you can see, they're already getting really ripe. So this will be perfect for tomato soup. So I'm going to cut all my tomatoes in quarters just like this, and the recipe does not call for this, but I am going to add some bell peppers into the soup as well. So I'm going to cut everything up and I will come back when I'm all done with that and I'll show you what the next step is. All right, so this is what I've got going on here. Now, I will have the recipe linked down below. It calls for balsamic vinegar, which I do not have. So I am going to use red wine vinegar, which is more acidic and less sweet. That being said, it also calls for honey. So I'm going to use a little more honey than what the recipe calls for. So I'm going to drizzle this with olive oil. Doesn't need to be a lot. Just make sure that you get everything a little bit covered there. Then I'm going to do the same thing with my balsamic. Now remember, I'm using red wine, so I'm not going to use also quite as much as the recipe calls for because it's more acidic. Ah, look what I found. I found some balsamic. I'm actually pet sitting, so I didn't see that they had any, but I'm going to add a little bit of this because why not? Oh, this actually is almost, not quite a glaze, but almost. I'm going to add some of this because that's what it calls for, and why not? I want to. We'll have a little extra vinegar in there. Vinegar never hurt anybody. Perfect. Next is to add the honey. You can add any honey you like. It doesn't say any specific kind. I'm using this Lover's Lane honey that they have here. And I'm just going to, I guess they don't use the top. I'm just going to drizzle. Again, I'm not actually measuring with this. It calls for, I'll have it listed down below exactly how much it calls for. I'm not using the exact amount. I'm actually not a big fan of honey. I know, shocker, right? But the smell of it from when I was younger has always just turned me off and made me nauseous. I don't know why, but it calls for honey. And if you absolutely do not like honey, you can absolutely use like regular sugar on top or a little brown sugar. You can substitute whatever you like, but if you're using brown sugar, I would cut back the amount a little bit. I wouldn't use quite as much. And you can always add more sugar later in the recipe if you find that it's not sweet enough to your liking. Tomato soup is not supposed to be super sweet. It's supposed to have a balance of acidity and sweetness. So, that being said, the next thing I'm going to do is take some sea salt here and just sprinkle that right on top. Oh, and the very first thing I forgot to say, oh my goodness, I always forget to say this in the very beginning. Turn your oven to 360. That's what temperature this is going to be at. And the recipe also says to divide into 2 sheet pans, but this one is big enough. If you have one big enough for the whole recipe, then use one. If you only have small pans, then divide it into 2. So here we go. I'm going to throw this into the oven. and it says to bake it, or not bake it, to roast it for 45 minutes, and you're going to rotate the pan halfway. So we will come back and see where we're at the halfway mark, and see what the tomatoes look like. All right, we are at the halfway mark now, and this is what these are looking like, which is really good. So I am going to just turn the pan here and give it another 20 minutes, and we'll be back. All right, so here we are at the 45-minute mark, and this is what we're looking like. Nice and roasty toasty. I'm gonna put this down real quick because I can't do this one-handed. All right, so this is what we're looking like here. So these tomatoes are nice and soft, and you can see the skin kind of shriveled and is roasted. And these peppers, the same thing, nice and roasted. So we are all good here and ready to move on to the next step. All right, so we are back for the next part of this soup. What the recipe says is while the tomatoes are in the oven, you should move on to this step. It's not necessary that you do that, but that's what it calls for. I did not do that because I had to go run an errand, but it's not going to make or break your recipe. So my tomatoes were already done, as I showed you, and now we're moving on to the next step. So the tomatoes are cool now, which is totally fine, not a big deal. All right, so now I have my oil heating up, and I am going to saute 2 shallots. So first thing we're going to do, like I said, is just saute these up until they're nice and soft. Now, full disclosure, this is creamy tomato basil soup. And I went to the store to get a few things to go with this, and I forgot the basil. So, for this purpose, we're having just creamy tomato soup. It is going to have dried basil in it, but it's not going to be the same as with regular basil as well. So, for today's video, it's going to be just creamy tomato, but I will add the basil later. But I will... When I get to the step where the basil belongs, I will show you what to do, or I'll tell you, what to do in that step. Next step is I'm going to add 4 cloves of garlic chopped up, just a rough chop, and we are going to let that cook as well. Next, I'm going to add my 1 tablespoon of my Italian herb, and we're going to let that cook up a little bit. And that's going to take about 10 to 15 seconds. And then the next thing we're going to do is add a couple of tablespoons of, what is this, tomato paste. And we're going to give this a nice stir and mix that in. And again, it calls for white wine. I don't have that, so I am going to use a mixture of balsamic and red wine, which is kind of what we used before. So I'm just going to use a mixture of those two. If you have white wine, use that. Now, I would not recommend using other wines like apple cider, vinegar, or anything like that. But red wine, white wine, or balsamic, I think will do good. And we're going to let this cook down for just a few minutes here. So this is actually the part where if you had your tomatoes in the oven, you would turn this down and let this cook while your tomatoes were finishing in the oven. But since I already did the tomatoes earlier and took them out, we're going to let this cook for about 3 to 5 minutes. Okay, so it's been about 5 minutes. And we are ready to go to the next step. Also, I should add that the recipe actually states at this time to add plenty of salt and pepper. I don't like to do that. I like to add it at the very end because sometimes you can end up adding too much and then you can't take it out. So it's better to add it at the end rather than in between each stage. So now I'm adding 2 cups of veggie stock. You could use chicken stock if you wanted to. You could even use beef broth or beef stock would be good too. You can use any one of those, might be good, but it calls for veg stock, so that's what we're using. So I made an oopsie. I was actually supposed to add the tomatoes at this point, but I don't think it's going to be, I don't think it's going to make or break the recipe. So technically what I should have done is added the tomatoes in and then added the this broth and then done a little blending, but I did it backwards, no big deal. But now we're going to add the tomatoes in, and you want all of those juices in there. You want that to go in because that right there is where all your flavor is. Oh, look at that. All that oil and juice. And remember, we salt and peppered this too, or salted this, not peppered, but we salted that, so there's salt there too. So if you salt every step of the way, you could potentially over salt things. Is where you want to take your blender, and if you had basil, which again I do not because I forgot it at the store, this is where you're going to blend. You're just going to blend everything until it's nice and smooth. Alright, so this would be the step also. If you did not have one of these handy dandy hand immersion blenders, if you just have a regular like a smoothie type blender, you would just dump it out into that, blend it until it's smooth, and dump it back into your pan. But I like to do it this way. That way there's less mess to clean up. And we're going to give this a stir and just see if there's any chunks I missed. If there's small, tiny little chunks, I'm okay with that. I just don't want big chunks. So it looks pretty smooth to me. So now the next step is to add the heavy cream. And it's going to be 1/3 of a cup. I may add a little bit more because, well, I just like heavy cream. I may add a little bit more because I like my soup really thick and creamy. So I'm adding another half of the 1/3. So 1/3 plus a half of 1/3, whatever that is. Don't ask me to do math. I know I'm a baker and I don't like math. Go figure. So see how that changes the color a little bit too? It makes it a little bit lighter and pale. Now when it comes to salt, everybody's taste is different. So sometimes a recipe will say how much salt to put in, but I always adjust accordingly because everybody's taste is different. Some people like more salt and some people like less salt. What I mean by that is some people's taste buds are stronger than others, so the amount of salt it takes for them to make the have the food, have a lot of flavor in it might be less than somebody else. Like, let's say a smoker, for example. They may need more salt because their taste buds typically are less than someone that doesn't smoke. So you can adjust according to your taste buds. That is much better. So the recipe doesn't say to, but I'm going to let this simmer for about 5 to 8 minutes. And then we'll come back and we'll give it another taste and see. Usually when it simmers, the flavors become more richer and more flavorful. So we'll come back in about 5 to 8 minutes and we'll see. I'm going to turn it down. I have it on a 4 right now. I'm just going to turn it on a simmer. Oh, you know what I forgot to do? Oh my goodness. I forgot to add the best part. The Parmesan cheese. No wonder, I knew it was missing something. Okay, hold on. I've already got my Parmesan shredded. You can buy yours pre-shredded. If you don't have it pre-shredded, you can shred it yourself with the block of cheese. Parmesan or Italian cheese, I think it said. So I'm adding half a cup here, it said, according to the recipe. Again, this is one of those things that I'm a cheese lover. So that might be a little bit more than a half. Not much, but I didn't really measure. I just, what do they say, measure with your heart? Yeah, I can't believe I almost forgot the best part. Alright, now let's give it a taste and see. Let me bring you up so you can maybe see me. I don't know. Yeah, the cheese is going to be so much better. And you can always add, when you're serving it, you can add fresh chopped up basil on top along with the cheese. Oh yeah. 2 thumbs up, or 2 okays, whatever you would call these, 2 thumbs up. That is really good. You guys should give it a try. So that's it for today's video, guys. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know if you try this soup and if you make any adjustments. Like I said, you can substitute chicken stock, beef stock for the vegetable stock if you like. It doesn't matter. It's up to you. It will change the flavor profile, so keep that in mind. And again, the recipe calls for adding salt in between certain stages, but I like to add it at the end because if you end up adding too much each time, then at the end it could be too salty, and there's really no way to fix that. I hope you guys enjoyed, and let me know what your favorite soup is, or maybe you don't like soup during the winter. Maybe you're not a soup person. Maybe you like stews or something like that, but what do you like during the winter months that keeps you warm when it's cold and rainy outside, and your weekend and whatnot? Let me know, and I'll see if I can find some recipes. And I'm gonna go make myself a grilled cheese sandwich and have some of this soup and dip it in there. So I'll see you guys all in the next one. I give this one 2 thumbs up.